Hi, nice to see you again. Blender is not that difficult, and I will try to show you why I think everybody can learn Blender. And if you really have some ideas, that is not that difficult to bring them into the 3D world. And today I think we should have a look at some more complex shapes. The first time that we did this stream, we just had some rectangular shapes and some boxes and everything, like we built a small house. And now let's try a bit some things that are a bit more difficult, like a bottle. So we have round shapes and we have a glass material in the end. And the bottle is not just going to be flat glass. We're gonna have some ornaments on it. So let's see how we can do this. Okay. So let's have a look at the chat if there is anyone already asking questions. And by the way, you can just ask me things while we're doing this, and I can just jump back and forth. Okay. Okay. Yeah. If you don't have a Blender ID, it's easy to set up, but you can just ask me things in the YouTube chat, and I will try to keep up with both. If I miss something, maybe someone can give me a poke. Okay. Yeah, this looks okay. So we have the default cube here as usual, as always. And you know what is going to happen to the default cube in Blender? It always happens to the default cube in Blender. You click it, press X, and delete it. It's gone. This is the fate of the default cube. It always happens. It is basically a requirement for every Blender tutorial, and everybody who uses Blender, the first thing you do is you delete the default. Poor default cube. Right, okay, let's get on with making a bottle. So we have to, every time you want to build something in 3D, you have to think about how you're going to start. And for a bottle, it probably is the best idea to start with a shape that is most similar to it. And you could try, if you want to make a bottle that's a bit bulge, you could try to start with a sphere and work from there. That kind of works. But I found that the best method to build a bottle is start with a cylinder. So let's do that. We have the startup scene. Everything is nice and tidy in the middle. You can see the 3D cursor in the middle, which is the place where new objects will spawn when you start them. You can see in the lower right here, there is my keyboard display. You can see what I'm doing, keyboard and mouse display. I hope you can read it. If you can't, let me know and I will increase the size. And I hope it will stay open. Sometimes it closes, but I think fine for now. Right, okay, let's Shift A and start with adding a cylinder. And you can always, when you add something, you can change the parameters before you move it around and change anything with it. You can say, like, you make it a bit more detailed. You can see it here. Like if you have like 3 vertices, or you pull it up to 100 vertices, you can do that. For now, the default was okay. I'm pressing backspace here. Going default is 32. That's already quite a lot of resolution for an object. If you would want it to have it in a game or something, you probably take it down a bit because the object is going to be very small. So this is a 1 meter bottle. Yeah, let's make a 1 meter bottle. That's fine. And this is important in the end for physics. So if you have a physics-based renderer like Cycles, which Blender uses, then things can be very different if you have a big objects compared to a small object. So I'll just keep it at 1 meter. Let's see what happens. And a 2 meter height. So we're going to change that anyway. So let's just keep it like this. And so why not a lathe object? We could do that. We could just have some kind of outline. I guess that's what you mean. You have an outline, and then you just spin it around to make it cylindric, circular symmetry. So you just spin it around and have your contour. You could do that, of course. But I think this is much easier to do it like this, especially for people who haven't done this before. So you just have a cylinder and you start modeling from there. So you can tab with the tab key in edit mode, where you can see all the vertices, what the object is basically made of. And you can see the object itself. We need to go in edit mode, into edit mode. And of course, a bottle is probably much higher than this. So let's just pick all the vertices with A, scale it up, and only on the height Z-axis. Just push the Z key. It doesn't show that for some reason once you're in mode like this. So you can see the Z key, and then you can see the blue line coming up. Now we're pulling up like this. And another question, yes, we do have splines in Blender. Yes, we have, let me just show you here. Curves, Bezier curves, circles, NURBS, and paths. And I guess for splines, you probably use Bezier curves or something. Right, so let's take this height. This looks fine to me. We want it to be a bit more detailed. We could just go and, let me just do that with Control R. You can add cuts to the object. We could just do that and put another cut here. Select all of this and then scale, except for the Z-axis, Shift Z, and then scale it down, and it will look a bit like a bottle. Of course, we have to move this up and all that stuff. We could do that, but we want to have a bit more detail on the bottle before we do that, because if we do that or try to do that afterwards, if the bottle is already shaped, it's a bit more tricky. It's a bit trickier. So I do double tap G to slide the vertices along, put it a bit above the middle. That looks about right. And now we need some detail to work with. So I start again with a loop cut. Loop cuts are very important for 3D modeling. You do that all the time. And then just roll the mouse wheel up. And you can choose how many cuts you want. Or you can type in a number, like 20. And then enter. Then you can move them around up and down if you want to. I don't, so I just push the right mouse button to put them in place. Now we have lots of geometry to work with. And that's a good thing in this case. Of course, you want to save geometry wherever you can, but if you need detail, you need your geometry. Or, more advanced, you take a normal map. But we can look at that at some point. All right, so how do we get some detail here? Maybe we just select every other loop. You can see with the normal left click, you select single pieces like single vertices. And if you want to select a whole loop around the object, this is why loop cuts are so important, so you can select them. You can go between the vertices and with Alt click, select the whole loop. Start with this one and pick every other one. Here, here, here. And we can scale it again, except for the Z-axis. And then pull it back like this. This gives us some detail for the bottle. This looks a bit jagged right now, of course, and we can fix that. But for the moment, this is okay. And to add a bit more visual interest, let's just make it wave around the bottle a bit. To do that, this is why I didn't shape the bottle yet in any bulb form or something like that, because we need to move around stuff, and that's easier to do when things are still straight up. To do that, we just select everything from that point to this point. You can do that with Control click, which picks the shortest path between the active, you can see this, the active vertex and the selected vertices. So you have this one is active, and these are, the last one is always the active one, and the orange ones can see are selected but not active. So we start here, go to the second to last one, control click, and then have selected, have all of them selected down here. Now I can just G for grab, so move things around again, and then on the Z axis alone and pull them up and down. This is not exactly ideal. We want it to be a bit more like a gradient, so it is not just an edge like this, but we want to have a smooth line. We can do this with the O key, which is this one here. You can see if I push the O key, it comes up and down. So proportional editing. That means it takes into account the geometry around it and moves it up and down or left or right. So I just show G and Z and can move it up and down. Then you can pick the influence with the mouse wheel. How much of the geometry should be affected? This. And you can see it also takes the bottom of the bottle, which is not the thing I want, because I want the bottle, of course, to be flat on the bottom. So to make sure that the bottom stays in place where it is, you can select it and hide it. Everything that's hidden will not be affected by an operator that you use. So we can just hide the stuff down here with the H key. Now the bottle is cut open at the bottom. And select the stuff again. Start again here. And now control click. And we can move G, Z axis, move it up like this. This gives us a nice wave shape. And on the other side we can do the same thing. Could have selected all on the other side as well, but I want to have a different wave shape on the other side. Not as much. So G, Z up, push it up a bit, and tighten it like this with the mouse wheel. Okay, I think this looks good. Could be a bit more, but let's just run with it. This is okay. Now to bring back the vertices that we hit before, just press Alt H. And they will come back flat at the bottom as we wanted them. Double tap A to deselect everything. And now we can start shaping the bottle. Now that we have all the geometry in place, let's just start make it a bit. Of course, we want it to bulge out maybe a bit here and be more narrow at the top, so we have a nice neck and the bulge here. And then at the bottom, make it a bit smaller again, or a bit narrow again. So select all the stuff at the bottom. And now we can just scale it down, and we still have the proportional editing on. So we can just put it up like this and scale it down. So we can, the question is, can we quantize operations? What exactly do you want to do? Quantizing in what way? It's probably possible. I have an idea of what you mean, but I'm not sure. Let me just pull that down a bit. Okay, this is okay, I think. And up here, scale. I think this we can do better. We can just start at the very top. Yeah, that's much better. And pull it down like this. Looks good to me. And at the top, don't really need this one. Like this. Okay, let's do it like this. Limit the effect to 10, 20, or 30 units. Which effect? You mean the proportional editing effect? I mean, not exactly sure. You can type in numbers to do something like that. So you can numerically do the same stuff right and left. You could add a mirror modifier, so you have the same thing on the right and on the left, so it does that automatically. Or, of course, you can type in numbers. If you go up here to the N, we call it the N panel. It's the side panel, sidebar. Just push the N key, then go to item. here you have all the numbers, so you could just click on a vertex and then type in numbers and type the same number just with a minus or a negative sign on the other side. You can do arithmetic in here, multiplications, all that stuff. Maybe that's what you mean. But if you want to do the same thing on the left as you are doing on the right, then I would use a mirror modifier. Modifiers are a thing in Blender that are very important because you can do basically non-destructive editing and non-destructive modeling just by using modifiers. If you move, then the vertices move only in 10 steps. Yes, you can do that. That's called, you do it like snapping. So you grab a vertex like this, and you can set up here, you can set up increment, and then you can set up the grid snap. Like you can set up the grid to be the way you want it, and then just grab it, hold the control key, and then you can see it just snaps to the grid units. So first to set up the grid the way you want it, and then you can do the snapping. Right click always cancels the operation that you're just doing. So if you're scaling something, again with snapping, you can scale with snapping like this, and then it's right click and it comes back. Modifiers do appear in the object tree, yes. It's on the upper right here. This is the outliner. We will use a modifier very soon, so I can show you that where it comes up. So right now, let's shape the rest of this bottle. I think 3 is enough. You can see it now does a bit of a wavy line when we cut it, because here is the wavy line, here's the straight line, and it tries to average out. If you don't want that, you can right-click, you can alt-click the loop, and then scale on the z-axis and flatten it out. Or you can, let me just disable proportional editing, like this again, scale z, or just type the number 0. This is something you can do in Blender in pretty much all the places. If you want to move this 1 unit to the right, you can just go grab it, y-axis to the right, and then 1. It moves it 1 unit to the right. Of course, this also works with like 1.54 or something like that. So let's finish up the shape, scaling this down a bit, scaling this down a bit, and here, and here, and flatten these. Flatten those. Yeah, this is coming along quite nicely. You can see I'm a master glass blower. Everybody will want to buy one of these bottles for sure. So let's do it like this. And give it a bit of a rim for the cap to go on. Pull it up here, pull one down here, as close as possible, because this will be subdivided, and you can see why I'm doing this in a moment. I'm switching to face select mode. So you have the modes here: vertex select, edge select, and face select. For vertex select, of course, you have single vertices. Edge select, you can grab an edge and move 2 vertices at a time. And then for face select, you move a whole face. Face select, alt click to select this ring. Scale it up just a bit. That should be enough. And deselect everything, tab out. This is what it looks like right now. It's still a bit jagged, of course. It's still a bit, yeah, you can see the individual faces and everything. And let's change that. Let's make it smooth. So to make it smooth, right-click the object, and you can see it immediately shade smooth. This is one of the most important things that you do, because and that's why it is right at the top. So this looks a bit better. The outline is still jagged, and now we get our first modifier. We go over here. This is our properties panel. Everything about the object will appear here. All the settings, basically from down here to here, all the settings to your object. Everything up here is for rendering and the world and all the settings. And down here is a little gap. You can see that here. Down here is everything for the object. This is the wrench symbol is for modifiers. Start adding a modifier, and you can see there are lots and lots and lots of modifiers. And if you know how to use them, you can do really, really cool stuff without having to model a lot. You just model a few faces, use 10 modifiers, and it just looks awesome. So, subdivision surface. This is one of the modifiers that you use very often, because you have a very, you don't have to model all the detail. You just let Blender fill in the blanks. This is what it does. It subdivides the object and tries to interpolate everything so it looks nice and smooth. And it's so important that there's a hotkey for it. So you don't really have to do it yourself. You just click it and do Control-1. There it is. It's the subsurf. It's called subsurf modifier. Everybody calls it like that. It's subdivision surface modifier with a level of 1. You can see it here. The level in the viewport is 1. The level tells Blender how much subdivisions you want, so how many subdivisions you want. So if you have 1, it is just going to do 1 subdivision per face. If you have 2, it's going to do 4, so it's dividing it twice and then 3 times and all that. This, of course, will increase your geometry count, so polygon count. So be careful with that if you are working for a game or something like that. Don't overdo it. If you have a bottle like this and it's sitting on a table far, far away, you really don't want to add too much subdivisions. Too many subdivisions. If you want to have a render and look at it up close, yeah, go crazy. Just put up like 2. And this already gives us a really, really nice wave shape with basically no jagged edges anymore. You can go into edit mode and you can see this is your normal geometry, and under that you can see the actual geometry that results from it. So it interpolated everything between these jagged edges, and this looks really, really nice and smooth in object mode. And this is basically the general shape of our bottle. Or is it? This looks weird. Because Blender, of course, tries to interpolate everything, even on the edges and on the bottom of this bottle. And we want the bottle to be flat on the bottom, even with subdivision surface on. So what you can do is sharpen the edge down here. Some people, some tutorials, you will see people going like adding an edge loop down here, flattening this edge loop, and then pulling it down like this. It's called a proximity loop. So you pull it down very, very close to the other edge to tighten up the subdivisions. And yeah, that works. You can see it is still a bit wobbly, but the resulting face on the bottom is perfectly flat. You can do that. I prefer not to do that in this case. Let me see. I select the edge around it, then go Shift-E, or you can, everything you can do on menus as well. Control-E is for edge menu, so everything you can do to edges. Control-F is for face menu, everything you can do to faces. Control-V is for vertices, everything you could do to vertices. Let's do Control-E for the edges. And do the edge crease. This will pinch the edges together, and that will also affect the subdivision surface. So just pull it out and pinch it, crease to 1. The number you can see in the top left corner of the screen, it's running up and down while you're moving your mouse. Just pull it up to 1. And this gives you a perfectly flat bottom. The shading is a bit off, and we can fix that. This is because we have a big face down here which has no cuts. It's just one face with 32 vertices around, plus a subdivision modifier. So it has, like, I think 128 vertices or something, and it's one single face. And a renderer does not like that. Renderers usually want quads, so faces that are, let me just go to face mode, 1, 2, 3, 4 vertices. This is what a renderer really wants, and if you want to animate an object, this is basically what you have to do. The game engine or render engine in the end will always try to make triangles of everything, because a triangle is the smallest thing that you can render that has no distortion. A triangle is always flat. And it will try to do that here, and you can see it. Here, all the triangles that it tries to calculate to do the shading, and this is not good for a renderer at all, to have one big face like this. So, we are going to remove it. And you can remove a face without killing the vertices around it, just remove the face. This makes the shading already much clearer. And then we can go, select the edges again, go to the face menu and say grid fill. This will tell Blender, fill in this face with all the vertices around as best you can. And it does. This is what it looks like. It's a bit, yeah, it's a bit bulgy because it is a circular shape, but the shading is perfect. Yeah, bit of a pinch here, bit of a pinch there, but who's counting? Okay, so this is basically the best way to do it, as I think. You can, of course, try the proximity loops, and maybe for your case, it is better. But this is what I always try first. Same thing is going on up here. You can see the same problem. But in this case, let me just remove. What? I said remove this face. In this case, we don't want to close it up, right? We want to have a bottle, so we want to put some liquid in it, so we have to have it open at the top. So what we can do here is using our old friend, the extrude function. So for E for extrude, you can just pull it up, and then you have created some more geometry. That will just cancel the move. This will have the effect that I have the new geometry lying on top of the old geometry, so it's still here, you just can't really see it. But when I scale it down, there it is. This gives us a bit of a rim for the bottle. Now I can go and just extrude it back into the bottle and basically create the same bulb shape that I have here. But I am lazy. I guess every 3D modeler is lazy. Because this takes a lot of time, and we have to model all the stuff inside, and then have to make sure that we don't come out of the bottle at some point and intersect our geometry. We don't want that. So, since we are in Blender, let's just delete these vertices. Since we are in Blender, we're doing it with a modifier. Told you, modifiers are going to be very important. So, pick a modifier and use the solidify parameter. So this is down here. You can read it better if I make it a bit wider. Solidify. What that does is it takes the geometry you have and extends it to the inside. So it basically makes a wall of solid geometry out of a flat piece of no depth geometry. And it does that for the whole object, and we have a full inside now. This is a bit thin. You put the bottle on the table, it will break. So you can change the thickness up a bit. Nice and thick bottle. And everything you did on the outside, it will replicate on the inside. Usually, of course, you would want the bottle inside to be flat, so you can remodel it a bit. For the moment, we just use this and have the bottles inside basically follow everything that it does on the outside. I see something in the chat. Object Manager has only a wrench symbol. Assume you need to open a lower window and see the actual modifiers. No, you can do it like this. Here on the outliner, this is called the outliner. You can just open it here. Here's the modifier. Again, the wrench symbol. It's all color-coded also. So green is always object data. Blue is always modifiers. Put up, and then you can see here's the solidify and subdivision modifier. To see the actual parameters, yes, you have to select them. I assume, let me just check. I didn't try that before. If I have another object selected and I select this modifier, yes, it will bring me immediately to the modifier. So the outliner is basically your place if you are getting lost in your scene and you just want to have this object and that modifier, you can just pick it from the outliner and it will open here in the properties panel. Right, so now we have a nice and shiny bottle, but I said shiny. It is not really shiny. It's a bit dull. That is just because we are in solid view mode, which you can see up here. I just close this panel down. Up here you can see the render modes or the modeling display modes basically. And right now we are here in solid mode. You can see viewport shading. It says viewport shading and then method to display shade the object in 3D view solid. That just means it shows you the geometry as it is, as a solid block in basically in gray. You can choose a few colors, but this is not meant to be the actual view. This is a simplified view to make it fast and easy, and you can have a look at your object outlines. Then you can go over here, viewport shading material preview. If you have a material, we are getting to that in a moment. Material is basically what is this object made out of? Is it glass? Is it clay? Is it china? Is it metal? You can see it here. Just go to the material preview, and right now it's just white. It's a neutral white color, has no special properties. This is where we can make it look pretty. And let's do that. Let's make it look pretty. So to do that, we go to the materials panel. So this is still the properties for this object. And down here is the materials tab. So you can see there is no material defined, so we just get a white neutral look to this object. And we want to change that. Let's just pick a glass material. Let's add a material here. Oops, don't click twice, only once. This will add a material slot. This doesn't mean it already has a material, it only has room for one material at the moment. And now we have to create a new material, and it will already do a lot of stuff for us. And in this case, we don't really want all of that stuff. That's going to be interesting later, but not for the moment. So what do we want to do? This is the principled BSDF, as it's called. And what it does, it is basically a physically accurate render material for lots of stuff. It can do metal, it can do wood, it can do everything I just said, basically. But not. It can also do glass, but I didn't have a lot of success with it. So I'm using another shader for it. And this is called a shader. BSDF just means it's a surface shader that is reflective. So light bounces off of it. We don't want a principled shader though, we want a glass shader. This is a very, very simple shader that gives you nothing but glass. And already it does something here. It doesn't look flat anymore. The surface already looks a bit like, yeah, a bit like frosted glass. It reflects something. Where is that coming from? This is called an HDRI. Or an environment. So it's a big spherical texture that wraps all around the scene and is reflecting from the surface of the glass right now. And this is set up here in the viewport shading material preview. You can drop it down. Here you can see the texture. This is what you have. It's basically a hollow sphere that is wrapped around all our whole scene and is reflecting down here. So to make it look more like glass, we can pull down the roughness. There we go. You probably don't want to have it all shiny, even though glass usually is very, very flat, but it is hard to see the light bouncing off of it if it's perfectly glossy. So you want a bit of roughness here, just a bit, and that should be enough. And if you have another material, except for, so it's not glass, it is something else that is translucent, you can change the index of refraction. I believe 1.45 is already the correct value for glass. And there's nothing else we need to change. This is already a glass bottle. We can't look through it yet. And there's an option to change that. But right now we are using the real-time rendering engine. Or the renderer. Real-time render engine Eevee. Eevee means it's basically a game engine. So it is rendering everything as fast as it can, and it is sacrificing some quality for it. But that doesn't matter for us right now. For preview, it's good enough. Let's move it up a bit. I think 2 units. Yeah, it could be even more. Sit above the surface. If you want to be precise with movement, you probably want to go into what's called an orthographic view. So what we see right now is perspective. Everything obeys basically a vanishing point in the distance, and we can go to an orthographic view by using the keypad, the number pad to the right of your keyboard. If you don't have that, like on the laptop or something, you can always use the view modes here or one of the buttons right here. These are very, very handy if you have a laptop and no mouse or something. Then you can just click here to pan back and forth, click here to go left and right, and switch to orthographic view here. And we want the orthographic view in this case like this. This also lets you spin the camera around, and we want the is this a back orthographic? I want a front orthographic. There we go. Front orthographic view. And this flattens all the perspectives and vanishing points, and then you can see exactly what's happening in your scene. And you can see it is not exactly resting on the ground, which is not really a problem, but we want it to. So GZ, move it up. And there we go. That's close enough. Back out of perspective, back into perspective mode. The moment you move your camera, it goes back to perspective mode. And we need a surface for this bottle to rest on. Now we are adding our second object. So in object view, in object mode, Shift A again, add a new mesh, and let's add a plane. This will again appear where the 3D cursor is, this lifesaver thing here. Scale it up just to have something that we can have our bottle rest on. And I will move it a bit, otherwise we have a really big plane. So I move it maybe on the y-axis, grab it on the y-axis, I pushed the wrong key. So over there. We can look at it from the side and have a lot of room behind it for shadows and everything. So what we are going to do next, we are going to have some translucency, because we can't really see through the bottle right now. And this is because the Eevee render engine tries to be as fast as possible, and that means everything is switched off by default. So it is doing the lowest quality possible while still giving you some hint of how this object is going to look. So we are going to re-enable a few things. This is you're going to do this. And first in the material for this bottle, select the bottle again. In the material down here, first thing is backface culling. That's always something I do. You don't really have to do, but I want to see if a face of an object is looking at me or not. You can see it on the plane right here. A plane is only one face without depth, and is rendered from both sides. So you can see it from the top and you can see it from the bottom. But as you're starting to model, you want to see which part is the outside and which part is the inside. So what I do, This needs a material to be able to do that. I just take the default material, no fancy stuff. And add a backface culling check mark here. So that means from the back it is now culled. So it's taken out of the rendering. So you only see it from the actual outside. The inside is hidden. And I will do that for the glass material as well, backface culling. And to have translucency and refraction, which glass will do, you can click here these two buttons. So screen space refraction. This is a really nice option. And subsurface translucency, you can activate it, but you don't have to. But this is important, so you have refraction for this object. I think we can already see it a bit, but not quite. So you see, this is the part where I always have to search for the there we go. In the render properties, we have to enable screen space reflections. Now you can see it's already reflecting some of the material from here onto the glass. And there is you can just about see it going here in the background. It's a bit hard to see because this object has so much reflection going on. Let's add the refraction. There it is. Refraction makes all the difference. So here you can see basically how it's supposed to look if you try to sacrifice for quality a bit, because this is still a real-time rendering. So this is our bottle with full refraction and environment reflections up here. We can go to render mode. And render mode will disable the temporary environment texture that was around our scene, because we didn't add one ourselves, and the renderer will not do that for us. So if we want one, then we have to do it ourselves. In this case, I don't want one. I just want it like this. But what I do want is this table, whatever it's going to be, this flat surface here, be a bit brighter. So we go back into the material mode, go to the base color, and pull it up a bit. Doesn't do much. We need a light. The light is here. There's already in the default scene, there's already a light defined for you, and you can move it around just like everything else with G for grab. Move it closer. This will give us a nice shadow also. Move it up a bit. Yeah, I think this is okay. And of course, in the distance, it will just disappear, because there's nothing in the distance that could basically be refracted through the glass. So we give it something. Clicking our plane here, go with tab into edit mode, 2 into edge select mode up here. Click one of the edges, click the second edge with shift, extrude z-axis. Pull it up. And tab out of edit mode. Now we have something interesting going on in the background, and we can look at our bottle a little more in more detail. So this is all pretty nice already. And to see a bit more about the, I'm looking at the chat at the moment. Subsurface translucency is a weird word. Transparency, translucency, or subsurface scattering. Yeah, transparency is full transparency. So if you have a texture that has parts that are fully transparent, like a cutout thing, then you would select transparency like an alpha clip thing. So it's completely transparent. A transparency shader would do just that. Just make things transparent in certain areas. Translucency is a material that lets some light through, but not all of it. So it shines through the object. So it's translucent. And subsurface scattering is the thing that you have on skin or on wax, where the light enters the object, bounces around inside the object, and comes out again. So that is very important if you're modeling a character and you have like earlobes or something like that. That's a part where you absolutely want subsurface scattering, which also changes the light's color and some of the properties, makes it a bit more diffuse. So the words are very, very close to each other, but every single one of them means a different thing, and that is something, unfortunately, that you have to learn over time. And I guess some 3D packages name them differently. For Blender, that's how it is. Transparency is always fully transparent or no transparency, and translucency is, things that are partly translucent. What does Blender mean by subsurface translucency? Yeah, I would have to look that up, actually. Let's have a let's see if it tells us anything. Add translucency effect to subsurface. I can only, in this case, I can only guess. It would probably have the subsurface effect as you know it, and then make the inside of the object more translucent, so the subsurface probably gets a bit stronger. I would have to look that up. Okay, so next, let's have something else in the background. And this is where we can see what the 3D cursor does, actually, or in this case, the 3D cursor does. I told you that when we add new objects, they will always come up on the 3D cursor. It does a lot more, but this is a very, very basic function that you will need every now and then. So if you want to have an object come up right here, you just shift right click that part, and it will put the 3D cursor on the surface of that face. It's a bit slanted, but that's okay. We don't really use the rotation that much. And if we add a new object, let's just add a monkey. Every single Blender tutorial will add a monkey. If it doesn't do that, it is not a Blender tutorial. There we go. Now we have a Blender tutorial. We added a monkey. Move it up a bit so we can see it. And if someone is referring to Suzanne, this is Suzanne. You can see it when you click it. The name of the object will be Suzanne. There we go. Even though we added a monkey, we actually added Suzanne. Right. As I said, subsurface modifier is a hotkey, Control-1, and we shade it smooth. Right. It's just so you have something to look at. And Shift-Z to keep it on the same level, like this. To look at through our bottle and see all the nice refraction going on. And this is all in real time, so yeah, it won't be perfect. If we want to have it physically accurate, we could use the Cycles render engine, and that takes a lot longer to render, so I'm not really wanting to do that in a live stream. But if you want to do it here on the render tab, you can switch the render engine to Cycles. I just do it for a moment. And you can see this will probably kill all the compression that YouTube has. And it will hopefully recover in a moment. Let's see, it takes a while, as I said. It will clear up over time. I just have it to 32 samples. You can see the number here. And this is what it looks physically accurate, or as accurate as it can be. It's not that much different, so I'll just switch back to Eevee. Just so you can see what happens here. So basically that's how we can model a bottle with a bit of detail in it, how we can add some glass material and a bit of a background to bounce off of it. If you want to see something specific, I can try to show it to you. Maybe we can add another material for this bottle. We can put a liquid in the bottle, but that will only work with Cycles because Eevee can only, as far as I know, Eevee can only do one level of refraction and reflection. So if you have a second reflective body inside another reflective or refractive body, this will not really work. Since it is a real-time renderer, it cannot calculate all that stuff. So let's see if we can change this material, that bottle material, call it glass. Otherwise we just get confused. Can of course give the glass a tint. So tint it like green. A nice wine bottle. Or we could tint it like this, blue, or I don't know, like a sparkling water bottle or something like that. Subsurface scattering on Suzanne. Okay, let's try that. Let's try that. Something new for me. But here, new material. Let's call it skin. Give it a base color of light. Let's be European. Give it a lightly pink skin, like this. And some subsurface scattering, like this. You can see it already coming up here. Let me just put it back. This is without. And here is with subsurface scattering. It makes it so much softer, and all the edges are lit up in red at the, in this case, because that's the default basically. Subsurface scattering is used for skin and body so much that it has a default to go basically in the red tint when it comes out of the object again. You can change that here. The subsurface radius. Radius refers to the color vector radius. This is a bit weird. But if you put it all, you can just click. Let me just go again. Click and pull down, and then edit all three at the same time. Put it on one, and then we'll do just white. This is like wax. If you have a wax object, you would do white or the color of the wax. Yeah, this is really, really impressive. You have a real-time renderer that does subsurface scattering. Yeah, it is actually very, very impressive. And of course, you can just exaggerate here. Blur out all 0.1 or something. There we go. Yeah, this is what subsurface scattering does in real time. If you use that on cycles, of course, it will look quite a bit better. This is already very good, but in cycles, it's just mind-blowing. It really looks really, really good. And then put a skin texture on it, and yeah, you have a flashy Suzanne. We could put some light behind it, maybe. Let's just duplicate this light. Let's have some fun here. Put it behind monkey. Like this. And I would assume that we can't really see it here. Just put that light, hide that light. Yeah, you can see it a bit coming through. And now I want to try if the subsurface translucency is actually doing that. That would be interesting. Let me do the backface culling. And translucency. Yeah, there we go. So that's what it does. So we have, for the real-time renderer, the basically it helps it a bit and tells it, okay, this is supposed to be like a material that also does subsurface scattering from one side of the object to the other. I guess that's what it does. And this is the effect. And it is really, really cool. Down the light a bit. Actually a lot. Oh, like this. Yeah, you can really see how it works. So yeah, that's exactly what it does. It doesn't only calculate the subsurface scattering from the point of view into the object where you can see it, but also in this case, when you enable that option, it does that from the backside. Nice. See, these questions are really fun because I learned something as well, and yeah, that's why we are doing this. Okay, this is really cool. I need to remember that next time I try to render like a wax candle or something like that. That will come in handy. Get the lamp back. Put it back here maybe. yeah, you can see it coming through even with the other light on. This is cool. I like it. All right, so anything else I could show you? Is there any other, do you have any other ideas? Maybe other materials? Let's put another material on it. You can stack materials as much as you like, and you can apply materials to different parts of an object. Maybe I'll do that really quick so you can see it. Default materials, let's call that China. Give it a bit of specularity so it's reflective. Pull the roughness down. And I think that should be good. Give it a little bit of subsurface because China does that as well, but not as much. And just white. Okay, let's see how it looks if we apply it to the top part of this bottle only. Edit mode. Select the middle part of it. Control numpad plus. This is expanding the selection upwards and downwards. Basically outwards from your selection. And minus goes back again. So I want this part to be China. Doesn't make sense, but I want to have it right here. So I'll select the material here and say assign. When you create the first material, it assigns it to the whole object. And if you have selected a lot of faces, you can just click the material and say assign. Would it make sense to work with the Eevee render and layout sculpting face and just switch the cycles at the end for the best look, or the shaders you have adjusted for that? They are trying to keep Eevee and cycles as much as possible in sync. So what you see on the screen will be pretty much the thing that you see in cycles, just better, basically. There is a bit of a difference in some cases, like reflections, mirrors, refraction as you see here is not exact. And a few things that Eevee can't do yet. But most of the things, yes, I would absolutely say that you model and preview everything in Eevee, and every now and then switch to cycles and see what it actually would come out as. Yeah, that's absolutely what I would do. Eevee is really, really good already, and it comes very close to something where you can say, okay, this is what I want, or this is what I don't want. Can you remember selections on the object? Like this? It remembers the last selection, or if you want to say, I want to remember this set of... No, come on, give me this edge. Doesn't want me. Okay, let's do it like this. You want to always remember this... Can't click. This part of the bottle, right? So if you always want to have this, there are a few possible things that you could do. You can do face maps. So you add this as a face map sign, and then you can select other stuff and then go back to here to your face map and select it. So this is basically your memory. This also does a few other things in sculpt mode, especially where you can say only sculpt on this face map, only sculpt on that face map. And probably a lot of other things that I don't know. But this is basically what you can do if you don't want to use a vertex group. Because this is faces and this is vertices. And vertex groups are used for a lot of other things, so I wouldn't use them for just selection memory. Because it could mess up your rigging. If you do rigging and you have vertex groups that define which part of the object follow which bone of your armature, then it could potentially be a problem because it tries to normalize it. And in that case, I would use a face map. Or selection by name. Yeah, this is what it does. So you select it and you can go down to the face map and you can say second ring from above. Something like that. And then you have a name here and you can select other things and go back to this selection by just selecting it here and click select. It will add to the selection, so this will stay. So if you don't want that, first deselect everything and select it from here. I assume this is what you want. If not, just tell me and I will try to find another way. But this is basically the easiest way to do it. So this is supposed to be China. Is it China? Yeah, a bit. To be really China, you probably would add a roughness map to it to have some surface imperfections and some scratches and all that. But this looks okay. Maybe let's go back to the bottle, to the material and China. Make it a bit more shiny, less rough. Yeah, I guess this could pass at very, very, very pure China. Subsurface, probably can't even see it because there is no definition here. So probably can't even see if it has subsurface scattering. Yeah, and then like this you can add more and more materials to your object. It's just for fun. Add a metal cap on here. Too many, I think. Let's see what happens if we just take this. Add another material slot, another new material. Let's call that metal. Yes, it is. Cinema 4D has point, poly, and edge selection stored that way. Weighting has nothing to do with that. Yeah, weighting is just vertex group, and weighting is just the thing that we would use. And this is why I would not recommend storing a selection as a vertex group. You can do that. You can just add it to the vertex group and then call it back. So you have not only faces that you can keep as a selection, but also vertices that you can keep as a selection. It's probably something you could do for the time being, basically, as a temporary thing. But in the end, I would recommend deleting all those if you don't need them anymore. For faces, using face set is the best thing. The thing that makes most sense. There is an idea to add edge maps as well. Not only face maps, but edge maps. Then you have basically the thing that you have in C4D. And yeah, it's not there yet, but they are thinking about it. Because they say object data is the same everywhere, so if you have vertices or faces or edges, doesn't matter. It's all the same thing, basically. It's all object data, so you should be able to make maps in any kind of object. So they are trying to implement that. So going back to the material, metal. I want this to be metal. Now it comes to physically accurate rendering. So you pull up the metallic slider here, and that's basically it. You do nothing else. It is already metal. That's the idea anyways. And I have to, yeah, I forgot to assign the material. So metal, assign it to selected faces, and there we go. So for metal, you don't have to bother changing any other values here. It is already metal. Metal has the difference between metal and how they call dielectric materials, so any non-metals, is that a metal reflects its own color. So if you have like a china glass or a china mug or something, it will always reflect the light that comes in and doesn't change it. So if you have white light, it will reflect white light. Doesn't matter if the china mug itself is blue, it will always reflect white. So the light that comes in always goes out. If you have a metal mug, like a gold mug or something, you have white light and it comes back yellow or golden color. So any metal will reflect its own color. That's the difference between metal materials and so-called dielectric materials, which are not metals. So we can add more specularity to it, but I think it doesn't matter anyway because it's metal. But the roughness does something exactly. So if we pull down roughness, it will be more shiny and reflect stuff on the screen in screen space, because this is the real-time renderer, so it will only reflect things that you can see on the screen. So if we move Suzanne out of the screen, basically it won't reflect anymore, even though it should, but to save time, it wouldn't. Back. And it's a little bit more rough so we can see it again. There we go. So it's like a foil, an aluminum foil or something like that, or aluminium foil that you can peel off. It's a very fancy bottle. no idea what kind of brand it would be, but it's a very, very fancy bottle. And it's, unfortunately, it's empty. But yeah, as I said, if we put a liquid inside, you would have to use cycles. And that's a bit rough to do on a live stream. All right, I guess that's it for today. There was a lot of stuff here: materials, reflection, refraction. The proportional editing tools, subsurface scattering, which is a rather sophisticated thing to do. Yeah, I think that's a lot to digest already, and I hope that there was something for you in all of this, that you learned something from it. And yeah, if you still have questions, I will hang out in the Blender chat a bit more and try to answer things. Otherwise, just contact me on Twitter. And I guess we could make this a regular thing, just every Sunday at 8 or something like that. CET. That monkey head next to is probably poisonous. Yeah, it could be. Maybe we could just spill it over the monkey and see what it does. Maybe we could render that at some point. Okay, thank you very much for joining me, and yeah, I hope to see you all next week. I will just do it next week on Sunday again. I think I have nothing planned for Sunday next week, so see you on next Sunday, 8 o'clock, the same place here. And yeah, happy blending. Have fun.